Listen, life's all about leveling up. Whether you're handling business on the field or kicking it in your zone, you like to celebrate with cigars that match the moment. That's why you should link up with Famous Cigars to bring you a wild deal. Right now, you can grab 8 premium cigars for just $8. You heard that right. 8 top-rated cigars at $1 a stick. Top quality brands like Oliva, Romeo y Julieta, and Davidoff. Hand-picked just for you and worth over $80. Hit up famouscigars.com/cam and lock in this exclusive deal. While you're there, check out their insane selection of premium cigars, all shipped fresh and fast from their massive 20,000 square foot humidor. That's half a football field. Famous Cigars has been in the game since 1939 and still family owned. So celebrate every win with the folks at Famous. 8 cigars for $8. famouscigars.com/cam.
The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. All right, Monty Williams was fired from the Phoenix Suns just a few hours after we released our last episode. So here we are, back within a day and a half after recording our initial reaction to the end of the season. Sam, how are you doing?
Hi, guys. We're back. It would have felt a little bit silly to record an episode, I think, 3 hours after we recorded one yesterday. So I don't know. Is this our emergency podcast? It's a pretty,
I guess so.
It's a pretty lackluster emergency response.
Well, yeah.
To be honest,
it's not a mid-season firing, right? Less of an emergency.
Right. Yeah, this is more of like a, I don't know, like an urgent care situation. We're definitely not going to the emergency room here.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say.
We called like the regular police number, not 911. It
Right.
wasn't a 911 emergency.
Yeah, this was like someone broke into our car and you have to go get the police report for the insurance. You know, like this is a low level response incident. So we're here. It's been a day since it happened. I feel like we talked about a lot of this stuff on the last episode already, right? So it's not going to be a complete rehash, but I do still think if for some reason you haven't listened to that episode, it feels relevant, a lot of it to me still, in terms of setting the tone overall for the offseason.
Yeah, if you haven't listened, I suggest going back to listen as well. We talked about the possibility of Monty Williams being fired. We talked about the idea of potentially James Jones being fired as well. And by the way, I mean, spoiler for something I was planning on talking about later, I'm going to leave that on the table for now, that he still potentially could be fired. But we also talked about the ideal roster construction around Devin Booker and Kevin Durant and the complications that will come with this offseason. And that's a good episode to listen to if you plan on listening to offseason podcasts from us, because a lot of the conversations are going to stem from what we talked about on that last episode. So go back and listen to that one if you haven't already. But for now, we have to talk about it. Monty Williams was fired, and by all accounts, by Matt Ishbia, even though the press release from the Suns came from James Jones, and he's done. No more Monty Williams on the Phoenix Suns. Now, first thing I want to say before we get into analyzing the future of the Suns, Monty Williams joined this team when Igor Kokoshkov coached 1 year and was fired during Ayton's rookie year, the first year of this podcast. Every other year since, you and I have covered Monty Williams. And one thing you can say about Monty Williams is he's a good coach, but also a great person. And I think he did a lot for the Suns. And when James Jones fired Igor Kokoshkov as the first thing he did as a general manager for the Suns, essentially, the first major decision he made, he said that it was all about the culture and trying to establish a culture of winning in Phoenix, and they did that. The combination of James Jones, Monty Williams, and Devin Booker did that in Phoenix, and it was, a rough ending in a lot of ways to that for Monty Williams, but you got to give him credit for establishing that culture in Phoenix along with the other guys involved.
Absolutely. And you know, when we look at the last 4 years for this organization, there were other characters who came in and sort of supplemented the entire ride. DeAndre Ayton was there for those 4 years. He played a big role. Chris Paul was there for 3 of those years. He played a huge role. But really the guys you're always going to think of as kind of leading it from multiple levels of the organization. It's Devin Booker at the player side, James Jones, the executive, and then Monty Williams, the coach. It's kind of those 3 guys exemplify what I will always remember as this particular era of Suns basketball, and something that they accomplished together, those 3, over the past 4 years. So, Monty Williams, I mean, this we talked about how it was possible, obviously, and to be honest, I kind of expected it.
We both did, yeah.
That doesn't mean I'm happy to see him go by any means. It just doesn't. To be honest, in all the time that I've been a Suns fan, and you've been a Suns fan the same amount of time as me, so basically stemming back to 7 seconds or less, I don't know, I'm going to need to give it some time, but like if we were to rank all of the Suns coaches that I've ever personally seen, Monty Williams might be at the top of my list.
Yeah.
That's going back to Mike D'Antoni at least. Certainly after Mike D'Antoni, there aren't many coaches who could compete with him on that list.
Well, there were many coaches, just not many that can compete. Yeah,
just not many in terms of their stature.
How many coaches since Mike D'Antoni? If you had to just throw out a number, 8?
Not that many. They had like 6 or 7. Because Gentry was there for a few years. Hornacek was there for a few years. Maybe Hornacek was only there for like 2 years. I don't know. They had a lot. Earl
Mike
Watson,
D'Antoni,
Jay Triano,
okay, here we go.
Kokoshkov.
Here we go.
Are we really going to do this? Okay.
Yeah, Mike D'Antoni, 2003 to 2008. The next coach immediately after that, Terry Porter for 1 year.
Yep.
Then Alvin Gentry, Lindsey Hunter.
Wow.
Jeff Hornacek, Earl Watson, Jay Triano, Igor Kokoshkov, Monty Williams. Exactly 8 coaches.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Of which... Yeah, so if you're going to rank everyone, I mean, I would put Monty Williams 1, Mike D'Antoni 2, Alvin Gentry 3, and then after that, who cares, right? Like,
yeah, right. It's just a bunch of guys who were here for like a year and a half, 2 years at most.
Credit to Jeff Hornacek for being runner-up coach of the year that 1 year, though. That was cool.
Yeah, fun year. But yeah, I agree. I think with Monty Williams, it's, I guess we should rehash some of it for people who didn't hear it, but there were valid criticisms of Monty Williams. And look, I think one of the main ones, and one that I think we could have hammered more, because we tended to focus on the playoffs, which I'm trying to look at big pictures more than anything else. But we tended to focus on the playoffs when it came to how we were talking about Monty Williams and maybe the lack of adjustments or not pulling the right strings at the right moment. But the thing with Monty Williams that has sort of plagued him this entire time that he's been a coach of the Suns is playing sort of an old school style of basketball where they don't shoot enough threes. Lots of mid-range shots and never really straying away from having a big on the floor. And it led to a lot of wins. So, this is not necessarily a bad thing. But if you're an owner of the Suns, right, if you're a general manager and you're trying to think about what could change, trying to find somebody who has more of a modern philosophy for the Suns is something that you could consider a valid thing to want. That could make a big difference, especially now that 2 of your main star players like to shoot a lot in the mid-range. Everyone else around that probably don't want to build a team with, DeAndre Ayton shooting mid-range shots, Chris Paul shooting mid-range shots, Terrence Ross shooting mid-range shots, or Landry Shamet shooting mid-range shots. You need to find more of a modern approach.
It's interesting, though, because I remember one of our main concerns when they first hired Monty Williams, he had not been an NBA head coach since his time in New Orleans. At that point, which had been, when was he hired for Phoenix? This was 2019. Mm-hmm. So at that point, it had been about 4 years since he was fired from New Orleans. And all we had to go on was going back and watching his New Orleans tape with some decent teams that made the playoffs with a really young Anthony Davis. But you went back and you compared the way that the New Orleans Hornets or the very early New Orleans Pelicans at that time played basketball versus the way the Phoenix Suns played basketball under Monty Williams. And it was night and day, even if you say that the Suns over the past few years were not exactly modern in their approach. It was a far cry from what he was doing in 2012 or 2013 with the Hornets, where they were having Ryan Anderson set a screen and then pop out to a 17-foot mid-range jump shot, right? Just something that doesn't happen in the NBA anymore at all.
Yeah.
So I remember we were really worried about could he modernize his game at all when he came to Phoenix. I feel like he came quite a bit.
Well, at the very least,
he came pretty
one
far.
one big lineups were nice, right? Even though he tried to shoehorn a few two big lineups in there, but just playing a single big in DeAndre and with shooters around them was pretty smart. And a lot of it was Chris Paul ball. They did it with Ricky Rubio too, but a lot of it was just sort of what you do when you have Chris Paul as well. And, it'd have been interesting to see him coach without Chris Paul. I wonder what that will be. And I think Monty Williams will land on his feet, guys. He's going to be fine. It's really good. A really good coach. Has been coach of the year, won the Coaches Association coach of the year, coached a team to the NBA Finals, and is really well liked by players and people within the organization. Having said that, they would have done this if Devin Booker and Kevin Durant weren't at the very least okay with it.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure about that. I think we need to talk about that just really quickly. With Monty, where he goes next, I mean, I think it just speaks to how we need to give NBA head coaches more credit than we do. I mean, we scapegoat them so often. It is such a difficult job, and it is one of the reasons why you need to have such a specific personality for this job that I personally could never have. Because for me, I mean, the thought of if I'm Monty Williams and I feel like look, he made mistakes, but he did most things right over the past 4 years. Won Coach of the Year 12 months ago. And now he has to dust himself off and present himself in front of maybe rebuilding organizations at this point and see who wants to take him on again. That just seems daunting and kind of exhausting. I'm sure he's up for the challenge, and I'm sure he will land on his feet. For me, it's why I would not want to be an NBA head coach. I would probably, to me, it sounds like, I said this on Twitter last night, being an assistant feels kind of like where it's at in the NBA. For me, stay out of the spotlight, don't have people yelling toxic things about you on social media after every loss. That kind of seems like the place to be. But
I'm going to start attacking assistant coaches now that you say that.
Okay, that's a great idea, man. That'll get us far.
Kevin Young, man, not making enough adjustments.
That's a kind of funny bit, actually. I'm kind of in support. Look, I know, like, where we don't have to spend a lot of time on this. Where's Monty going to go next? I don't know.
Toronto or Milwaukee, it seems like.
He has his pick from a number of organizations. Yeah, he could go to Toronto or Milwaukee. I know the few Detroit Pistons fans that I follow on Twitter are absolutely salivating over the idea of him coming there.
He would be great for them,
and turning around their culture the exact same way that he did for Phoenix. But just nothing against the Detroit Pistons organization. How exhausting is that prospect for Monty of just having to start over from home base?
But now with Wiseman.
Or maybe Wemby. Yeah. But yeah, he'll get
Wemby though. If that's an interesting thing, maybe he should wait. Until the actual lottery and then try to get a job.
If his goal is just to stay in the NBA as a head coach, he'll be able to. There will be plenty of people who offer
why not
him
the
a job.
Spurs? I know Greg Popovich is still coaching, but how long? How long is he going to be doing it? I don't know. Maybe he'll coach for 10 more years. People were saying, how long could LeBron still be good? And he's about to potentially make the NBA Finals again. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's, there's a big part of this I think we have to talk about. And that is Matt Ishbia and the potential of having an owner who is too involved. Now, the thing is we can say as much as we want about the potential of it. We have no idea about any of this. But what Woj said is that this is a Matt Ishbia show now. Now, he had it originally in the article. The article said that Ishbia has fully taken over basketball operations for the Suns. And then he took it out, likely because somebody on the Suns said, that's not true. Probably Matt Ishbia was going, I'm not involved in scouting second-round picks or whatever. And, yeah, okay, they took it out. But then Woj went on ESPN today, before we recorded this, before the game that's on right now, and said that it's a Matt Ishbia show. And he also said, I think, and this is why I'm not completely ruling out the possibility of James Jones being fired, he said that James Jones's influence has been diminished. Those are the actual words that he used. And now we have an owner who essentially he came into the Suns, bought the Suns, negotiated according to Woj. This is all according to Woj, right? Take it all with a grain of salt. Negotiated the trade, for Kevin Durant, and this is what Woj said. He negotiated it himself, made the trade, fired the coach as soon as he could, and then now I think the question I have is, do they have a plan for another coach? Because you can't fire a coach unless you have a pretty good idea of who's going to be that next coach. And that's what I think going to be my next concern. Look,
sure.
He soured on him, according to Woj. He soured on him. Those are the words that Woj used. Matt Ishbia soured on Monty Williams and was never fully bought in on Monty Williams. And look, you're the owner of the team. You have the right to do that. You're going to pay him his contract anyways. $20 million over 3 years Monty had left. So he'll be fine money-wise. But they got to have a plan, and they got to have something next. And it is, to me, I would say my concern level of having an owner who's too involved with basketball operations is fully at like a 6 now.
Is it
and
higher?
It could get a lot higher.
Is it higher than it was 24 hours ago before the news broke? It's higher based on this news report specifically. Okay.
Yeah.
The news report doesn't move me, just to speak for myself. Other people might feel differently. We're making a lot out of one line. Not that one line that was posted, and then, as you said, then it was deleted. But then Woj basically came out and said on TV the same exact thing today, that Ishbia has taken control. I just think we need to be careful because we always need to think with Woj specifically. It's not that he makes these things up in the sense that he pulls it out of his ass. He has no reason to do that. But he's taking information that he was fed by someone and parroting it. Him and Shams are the same. They're parrots. And I guess it's just, we have to think about who would have the incentive to feed Woj this information in the first place, that Ishbia is maybe becoming a little bit too involved early on in the Suns front office. And there are a couple of places that it could come from. I think the place that it doesn't make sense for it to come from is Ishbia's side of the organization, not necessarily from Matt Ishbia himself, but let's call it the Ishbia. Just to speak very black and white about this, there's going to be some tension in the front office right now that's to be expected, and one would expect that there are Ishbia loyalists and there are James Jones loyalists. There's kind of the new guard and the old guard, the new boss and the old boss. Not that James Jones was ever the owner, but you understand what I mean.
And James Jones has a long track record of giving nothing to the newsbreakers, right? Nothing at all.
James Jones himself, but that does not mean that the James Jones loyalists would necessarily operate the same way. So it doesn't make sense for someone who's behind Ishbia to be going out there and approaching Woj and saying, yeah, Matt Ishbia is taking he's interested in being the president of basketball. Like, they're not stupid. They know how that looks. Even if Ishbia is thinking that. Even if he's thinking, I'm Grand Emperor now and I want to make all basketball decisions, which who knows? He's not dumb enough to say that to Woj because everyone knows the optics of how that looks. It's more likely that this is coming from the opposite camp. This is a James Jones loyalist. Maybe it's even one of the people who just got fired by Ishbia 24 or 48 hours ago. Now, I don't know. Or it's one of the many people who are more concerned for their job security than they were 48 hours ago. Or 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago. And if we kind of think about it from that perspective, it makes me less worried about this in general, because if you're specifically trying to discredit Matt Ishbia, if you're approaching it from that side, the James Jones loyalist camp, and you're trying to discredit Matt Ishbia, the way that you discredit him is by saying, yeah, he wants to come in here and he wants to be too involved. He wants to do everything. The way you don't discredit him is by saying what, in my opinion, is more likely to be the truth, which is he wants to fire a bunch of people who he never hired in the first place, but not to replace them with himself, to replace them with people that he would rather actually hire because he is the boss now. And that is how these organizations, that is how business works. He wants to replace people with his own guys, his own henchmen. We can have conversations about certain people that maybe Ishbia wants to bring in those front office roles that would maybe be good ideas or bad ideas. But to me, it's not that Ishbia, I mean, it really would be a disaster scenario if Ishbia is coming in and he just wants to make all the basketball decisions. I just don't think at this point, my alarm is not raised. Personally, I don't think that's likely to be the case. I think what's more likely is a bunch of people are about to get fired, but that's entirely normal in terms of organizational turnover on this level. And he's going to bring in some people where he actually got the say in who gets hired, because that's just how it works. He's the boss.
one of the things about getting Kevin Durant on your team is that there is a version of getting Kevin Durant where you have an organizational structure that's in place, where you have star players and a front office and a coaching staff who are on the same page. And that's the Golden State Warriors. You add Kevin Durant to that, you win titles. There's another one where Kevin Durant joins and all of a sudden the coach is fired. He's putting the team together. You know, they're adding his friends to the roster like DeAndre Jordan, Kyrie Irving. And it ends in one single series playoff victory in the entire time that he's there. And my fear is that when you add someone as seismic as Kevin Durant, and then you start stripping away the organizational structure and the culture that you've built over time, then you're kind of handing it over to him a little bit. And we saw how that went in Brooklyn. And, you know, there's a way. The only thing that matters out of all of this is the decisions they make next, because there is a good reason to fire Monty Williams. There was enough evidence that it wasn't quite working at the level that they wanted it to work, and he had a good opportunity with this team. Three playoff appearances, 1 finals appearance, 2 second-round exits, both of them ending in an embarrassing way. So the only thing that matters is the decisions that come next.
Yeah, and I'll tell you right now, the Suns aren't going to hire a Steve Nash figure next.
Well,
to
that's
kind
the
of
other
just
thing,
turn
yeah.
the keys over to KD. I mean, that's the difference, right? We're talking about the short list right now, and maybe here's where we should bring up this short list.
Yeah.
You know, Ty Lue's name has been mentioned. He's still under contract. The two big guys who are not under contract, who have obviously been mentioned, are Mike Budenholzer, has a championship ring, and Nick Nurse has a championship ring. There's no Steve Nash figure here to just come in and turn the keys over. Now, regardless of how you feel, I think there's a large segment of the fan base that actually has very negative feelings towards, say, a Budenholzer figure. But you can't deny, in terms of culture, like is a figure that comes in and I think demands a certain baseline level of respect and is going to make KD work. Is not just going to come in and say, "Okay, KD, it's your team now, buddy. We'll do whatever you want." That's not how it's going to work under Budenholzer or Nurse or some of these other guys. So you still hope, however, that Booker and KD were kind of cleared this decision in the first place, because otherwise that's an entirely different thing that could go wrong for a number of reasons.
I mean, the facts are we had a new NBA owner, not ever involved in an NBA team in any capacity, negotiated, traded, and fire a coach in the first 6 months of owning the team. That did happen. You know, and it appears to be all from, and the thing about, by the way, the Woj reports, and I agree with the way that you're interpreting them, but the part about him negotiating the trade, that clearly just comes from the Nets, right? He just gets that from the Nets and knows that it happened because he gets a lot of information from the Nets. I also think, by the way, if we're talking about the phrase Matt Ishbia, they're taking that out of the original article. Part of me is like, what did Matt give him in order to take that out? Because Woj, his currency is information, and he's going to get something from Matt if he takes something out of an article that he obviously felt confident enough putting it in, because he mentioned it again the next day. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. Maybe he gave something to Woj, or maybe Woj is just kind of conceding to the fact that he needs to make nice with Ishbia, who is probably going to be the owner of the Suns for a long time and needs to maintain that relationship versus relationships that he potentially has with lower executives. Especially because, so here's the reason you're worried about Ishbia, right? The way that the NBA system is set up, you can fire a coach, there's a system of accountability there. You can fire a GM, there's a system of accountability there. Maybe the slight reason that I have any worry about Ishbia at all is because if he does turn out, and I'm not there right now, but if he does turn out to be this, you know, completely all-powerful character who just wants to make every decision at every level of the organization for the Suns, there's no system of accountability for that. He's just going to be the owner for a long time, and we're going to have a lot of the issues that we had, theoretically, under Robert Sarver. Not the harassment issues, but the basketball issues would be the same.
Other than without the money.
Right.
Let me just, before we move on to just to reiterate the coaching names again, part of me almost thinks, well, then if we're going to do this, if we're resetting to this degree, maybe it is a good time to try to get somebody like Bob Myers, because Bob Myers would not join an organization unless he had some level of guarantee that he's going to be left alone to do what he wants in order to win championships. Whereas James Jones does not have that same negotiating power as someone who already worked for the team after Matt Ishbia bought the team, or while Matt Ishbia bought the team. Part of me is like, well, yeah, maybe you do need somebody like Bob Myers to hold him in check. Not necessarily to the degree that Robert Sarver needed to be held in check. But Bob Myers has the credibility, but he also has the ability to negotiate, right, if you want him. And if which we have gotten a report, this one from Mark Stein, if Matt Ishbia is just out there writing blank checks to try and figure this out right now in his first off season, no better option than Bob Myers at this time. So we'll see what ends up happening there. The names. Let's go over them again. Let's reiterate them again. The first thing, Woj said the Suns are not looking to hire an assistant coach or somebody without head coaching experience. They want to hire a head coach, somebody who has coached at the level that they want them to coach at. For the Suns, now Nick Nurse was obviously a name that's been brought up multiple times, even some indication that they plan on interviewing him. Mike Budenholzer, just as you mentioned, 2 champions, by the way. Those 2 coaches have both won championships. If it's James Jones making the decision, we know how he feels about guys who win championships. He likes that. that thing matters to him. There is an interview circulating around with Kevin Durant talking about how much he respects Nick Nurse. That's good. That's good to hear. Because if you haven't already, go back, listen to our last episode. I talked about some concerns about Nick Nurse, being that he did not get along with some of the players that played for the Toronto Raptors to a severe degree, and probably led to his firing at the end.
That interview, which I admit I haven't seen yet, is dated from when?
When he was on the Nets.
Okay, like 2019 Nets or 2022 Nets?
No, more recent, I believe.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I'm not sure what year it was, actually. But yeah, it wasn't after the finals.
KD, if Nick Nurse is going to be your coach, man, conditioning. This applies to Booker, too. Guys, get ready to run. Get ready to play 40 minutes. We'll cross our fingers and hope for the best. Not necessarily the worst thing in the world. It's just that it would be kind of interesting.
A lot of minutes.
If that ends up being the case. Yep, a lot of minutes logged for the star players.
Yeah.
Who needs a bench?
And we might not have one. It's going to be hard to put this team together, as we talked about on the last episode as well. It's going to be hard. Nick Nurse, look, he's probably the smartest basketball head coach available that has previous experience. That's available, right?
You're talking about outs because you're assuming Ty Lue is not available?
Yeah, because the other name that was mentioned, and we talked about him on our last episode, that I like is Ty Lue. And the question is whether or not the Suns can convince the Clippers / Ty Lue to actually allow him to go. But it sounds like, according to Mark Stein, that's what they want. They want to try to lure Ty Lue over, which I am all for. I am like 100% for that one at this point without Monty Williams.
Yeah, regardless, just to answer your question, yes, Nick Nurse is very high at the top. If he's not above Ty Lue, then he's very close in terms of being a highly regarded tactician of the game.
And Mike Budenholzer, and Mike Budenholzer to me is sort of this lateral move from Monty Williams. I see them as relatively similar. The one thing I will say is the Suns will shoot more threes, as we mentioned in the last episode as well. That's good, but I do kind of see them as similar. I mean, Budenholzer was just fired for the Bucks right after Giannis did an interview saying, "Well, we didn't make enough adjustments in this playoff series," and then they fired him,
which has been their general complaint about Budenholzer for years now. He just happened to win a championship in 2021, so it didn't matter.
I don't get excited about that. To me,
I don't totally hate Bud. I'm really curious what his post-coaching career is going to look like without a Giannis figure.
Right.
Because
he coached the Hawks too. Remember?
Yes, he did.
The entire team won a Player of the Month award.
Yes, yeah. No, he squeezed a lot out of that Hawks team, no doubt. But yeah, I don't know what that's going to look like with him. Not my favorite choice.
No, yeah, I could find myself looking forward to the offense.
Would objectively be funny.
I think he is a smart offensive coach.
Would objectively be funny, though, if he ends up being our coach and Monty goes to Milwaukee. Would just be hilarious.
One thing I will say about Bud is he's from Arizona. And supposedly, when he was up for a head coaching job, the Suns did interview him. I don't know if you remember that. We talked about it on the podcast 4 years ago. When they hired Monty, they also interviewed Bud. And at the time, there were rumors that he, at some point in his career, would like to coach the Suns. So, yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe with the right assistant coaches, it could be okay. And then I can attack the assistant coaches when things go badly. Any other names we're missing there? I mean, Atkinson, I haven't seen, we talked about him in the episode, but I haven't seen any indication that the Suns are interested in him.
Atkinson
is for the reason we said.
Yeah, he's making the rounds. I don't think there's going to be anything that sticks between him and the Suns. Some people have
Kevin
mentioned,
Young. That's right.
Yes, Kevin Young. I feel bad for Kevin Young in all this. I mean, Monty just got fired, and then they're like, "Yeah, we'll interview you."
They owe him an interview. That is true. I think.
Not if they're fuck that. Not if they're not taking him seriously. Not if we all know that they're not actually going to give him the job. If I'm Kevin Young, I'm making the rounds, and I'm looking at one of these other teams. Like, can I go get an interview with Detroit? Can I go get an interview with Toronto? Because he's been an assistant for a long time. This is not his first rodeo. He's been in kind of these interview pools before.
Yeah, he interviewed for the Pelicans job when Willie Green got it, I believe.
Exactly. And so yeah, that's another guy I'm rooting for. Even though I don't personally know Kevin Young, I don't know a ton about him, but rooting for him to go get a job somewhere, especially if it feels like the Suns are giving him a token interview of sorts. That sucks. That's
Imagine
a shitty position to be in.
Imagine him watching that Woj interview where Woj is like, they're not planning on hiring someone who hasn't been a head coach.
Yeah.
That's just shitty, man.
Yeah, and it's just it doesn't make sense to fire Monty and then be like, yeah, hire his top assistant. That'll fix it all.
Right.
The other name I want to throw out, because I've seen some people mention, is Frank Vogel, who's a free agent right now, most recently, obviously, with the Lakers, also a championship coach. I'm not into him personally, but he's out there.
Neither.
Maybe he gets an interview. I don't know.
I don't think it makes sense for the personnel we have either. I think Nick Nurse can get a lot out of this team. Ty Lue would be the by far best coaching candidate for the Suns. And for those who don't know much about Ty Lue, the dude makes adjustments. Like, that's his big thing. He has the ability of coaching teams to do really dramatic and interesting things in the playoffs that throw other coaches off in a way that Monty couldn't do. And we saw it. You know, I think people might tend to want to judge coaches based on wins and losses. And yes, even the Suns had injuries at the end here, but like there's nothing like Kawhi Leonard or Paul George not being able to play in the playoffs. You can't really overcome that when you have a team entirely based around them. The dude's a genius, a very good coach, and coached the Cavaliers to a title, so don't forget that either. If he can be on the table, you got to do it. The thing is, you can't outbid the richest guy that, you can't really,
No,
you're not going to outbid the Clippers owner, Steve Ballmer. He's the richest one. And so that is not really an advantage in the Suns' favor there. So the question would be, he's under contract. Would they allow him to leave? And that, I think, is a pretty valid question. I don't know. And maybe the players would have a pretty high say in that when it comes to their star players.
Ultimately, for me, can I just say, get a guy with some experience, some previous head coaching experience.
Isaiah Thomas?
No. Stop. Let me keep going. Get a guy with some previous NBA head coaching experience and get the stamp of approval from KD and Book.
Yeah.
And honestly, the rest we'll figure out later. Just that might be enough for me, because what does it say about the coaching, the general ecosystem of being an NBA coach, the atmosphere, where it feels likely that in the Suns' interview process here, they might interview 3 of the previous 4 NBA champion coaches. Frank Vogel, Nick Nurse, Mike Budenholzer, all won a championship within the past 4 seasons. The only guy who they're not going to interview was out of the past 4 years was Steve Kerr. Obviously, he's the 4th out of 4.
And if the Warriors blow up somehow, obviously yes to Steve Kerr.
Yeah. But what does it say that, okay, so 3 of the 4 previous champions are free agents on the coaching market. They're all going to be available for us to talk to.
Yeah.
It's messy. All of this stuff is messy, but it doesn't feel like the worst place to be. I can't guarantee anyone that any of those 3 guys are going to be better than Monty, but just to say that all of this stuff is messy and we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to follow all of it just to gauge your concern level on Isaiah Thomas. Do you think he's been involved in any of these decisions that have been made here?
I do. I am maintaining on to a little bit of concern that we get a power couple of Isaiah Thomas in the basketball operations role and Tom Izzo as the head coach, and Ishbia just goes full Michigan.
Draymond Green point guard.
Yeah, just full Michigan at every level. Would not be ideal to me, but yeah, some people have thrown out Tom Izzo's name. Doesn't make any sense to me, but I don't know.
How old is he? He's got to be.
God, let me look up. He's not that old.
68. Okay.
Yeah, he's 68. He's not. I was gonna say he's not like in his 80s or anything.
That is that's a hard 68. Just by looking at him, dude lives hard. I'm gonna say that,
dude. This is like people have thrown out John Calipari's name for years. Like coaches in the NCAA, they have it made. You would be and Jay Wright is another one. You would be an idiot to leave one of those snug positions where you can just stay at a powerhouse school in the same program for 20 or 30 years for some NBA job where you're going to get fired after 2 or 3.
Yeah.
That would be silly.
Right. I mean, they become the most famous person in the state for a lot of these jobs, and they're the highest paid state employee, and they do all their own recruiting. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to do it personally, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see if that train has kind of ended, right? There's not a lot of those college guys coming to the NBA the way it used to be. It seems like
not at all.
A lot more assistant coaches and former players.
Yeah.
Brad Stevens notwithstanding. All right, we're gonna keep this one short. We just wanted to give you some level of reactions to the Monty Williams firing. We're gonna keep track of these stories as it comes. If something happens with James Jones, we'll try to be back as quickly as possible. And then, of course, as we know the candidates, as they get narrowed down, we'll give our take on each one of them. But we thank you all for listening, and hopefully a Patreon podcast midweek, Sam.
Yeah, that would be great. How funny would it be if we post this episode and then 3 hours after this one, James Jones gets fired?
Oh, no.
We would be back tomorrow, theoretically. But if that doesn't happen, thank you for listening, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
For over a century, Johnny Walker has shared its bold spirit with the game of golf. Now, crafted with Devereaux Golf, Johnny Walker introduces the Johnny Walker Blue Label-inspired Sunday Golf Bag, elevating the game with sleek design, Blue Label hues, and refined gold accents. Celebrate your hole-in-one with a premium Sunday bag crafted by Devereaux Golf. Submit proof of your achievement to johnnywalker.com/blue-in-1. Please drink responsibly.